Michael Jordan had faced the biggest moments in sports history, but nothing prepared him for this. In the middle of a crowded airport, he suddenly froze. Across the terminal stood his ex-wife, holding the hands of two children, twins. And when one of them turned around, Michael saw his own face staring back at him. What happened next would change his life forever. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Now, let's dive into what really happened. He had faced deafening stadiums, championship pressure, and last-second shots that decided history. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared Michael Jordan for this moment. The airport buzzed with life. Rolling suitcases echoed across polished floors, departure announcements filled the air, and travelers hurried past without a second glance. It was just another busy day at the terminal. For Michael, this chaos was familiar. Fame had made moments like these routine. He moved through the VIP entrance with calm confidence. Sunglasses hid his eyes. A dark hoodie covered his face. Security walked quietly beside him. No cameras. No noise. No surprises. Or so he thought. Suddenly, his steps slowed. Then stopped. His body froze as if something invisible had grabbed hold of him. Across the terminal, near gate 32, stood a woman he never expected to see again. Not here, not now, not ever. His ex-wife. Time seemed to collapse into a single heartbeat. The noise around him faded, replaced by a loud pounding in his chest. His mouth went dry. But she wasn't alone. Standing beside her were two children. Twins. A boy and a girl, no older than 10, holding her hands as they waited to board. They stood the same way. Moved the same way. Even tilted their heads in the same familiar manner. Michael's breath caught. Then his world shifted. The boy turned slightly, and Michael saw his own eyes staring back at him. Sharp. Focused. Familiar. The girl smiled, and it was his smile, unmistakable and warm. His heart began to race. "This isn't possible," he whispered, barely able to breathe. For the first time in decades, Michael Jordan, the man who never hesitated, never flinched, never backed down, felt completely and utterly frozen. As Michael stood frozen in place, memories came rushing back like a sudden storm. Moments he had locked away for years broke free without warning. His marriage, once filled with hope and laughter, now felt like a distant lifetime. The divorce had ended quietly, almost politely. On paper, everything was fair and settled. But emotionally, it had left deep scars neither of them ever truly healed. Fame demanded too much of him. The pressure of being Michael Jordan, the endless travel, the cameras, the expectations, all of it had slowly built walls between them. Conversations turned shorter. Smiles faded. Love slowly transformed into distance. They had both agreed it was best to move on. At least, that's what he believed. Michael remembered their final conversation as if it had happened yesterday. It was brief, cold, unfinished. No real answers. No emotional closure. Just a few careful words and then silence, a silence that stretched on for years. And now, suddenly, here she was again, standing in the same space as him. But she wasn't alone. She held boarding passes in one hand, guiding two children with the other. Michael couldn't stop staring. The twins moved with a familiarity that made his chest tighten. Their posture, their expressions, the way the boy slightly narrowed his eyes, the way the girl smiled softly, it all felt painfully familiar. His hands trembled. He began replaying the timeline in his mind, counting backward through years he thought he understood. Dates collided. Memories blurred. The truth slowly took shape. The math didn't lie. His stomach dropped. These kids, he thought, his heart pounding, they could be mine. Questions exploded in his mind. Why hadn't she told him? How long had she known? What else had he missed? He wanted to move, to speak, to run toward them. But his body refused to obey. Across the terminal, his ex-wife still hadn't noticed him. Or perhaps, she had noticed, and had been avoiding him all along. Then it happened. She looked up. Their eyes met across the terminal, and in that instant, the world seemed to slow to a crawl. The rushing crowd, the rolling luggage, the overhead announcements, all of it faded into a distant blur. There was only the two of them, locked in a moment neither had prepared for. Her face drained of color. The surprise in her eyes quickly turned into fear, then something deeper, regret. Her fingers tightened around the twins' hands, as if holding on to them was the only thing keeping her grounded. For a long, painful second, neither of them moved. Neither of them breathed. Michael felt his heart slam against his chest. Slowly, almost instinctively, he reached up and removed his sunglasses. There was no reason to hide anymore. The twins sensed the sudden shift in the air. Children always did. The boy turned first, studying Michael with innocent curiosity. He tilted his head slightly, squinting as if trying to solve a puzzle. "Mom," he said softly, his voice clear and honest. "Why does that man look like me?" The word struck Michael harder than any blow he had ever taken. His chest tightened, and for a moment, he couldn't breathe. His ex-wife swallowed hard, fighting back emotion. She knelt slightly toward the children. "Stay here," she whispered gently, forcing a calm she didn't feel. Then she stood and walked toward Michael. Each step felt heavy, filled with years of unspoken truth and buried emotion. When she finally stopped in front of him, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't expect to see you," she said. Michael opened his mouth, but the words struggled to come out. I think we need to talk," he managed. She nodded slowly, her eyes shining. "Yes," she said. "We do. I should have told you a long time ago." That single sentence echoed in Michael's mind, confirming what his heart had already known. Nothing would ever be the same again. They moved to a quiet corner of the bustling terminal, away from the constant rush of travelers. The twins stayed a few steps behind, curious and confused, sensing the tension between their parents but not yet understanding it. Her voice trembled as she began to speak, each word heavy with years of unspoken truth. I found out I was pregnant after we separated," she admitted, her eyes not daring to meet his. "By the time I tried to reach you, everything around you was chaos. Lawyers, reporters, cameras everywhere. I didn't know how to reach you without making things worse. I was scared." Michael's fists clenched, his knuckles white. His voice was low, calm, but every word carried the weight of pain. "Why didn't you try harder?" he asked, the hurt cutting through the composed exterior he had built over decades. Tears welled in her eyes, shimmering like tiny mirrors reflecting the fluorescent terminal lights. "I didn't want them to grow up as a headline," she said softly, glancing toward the twins. "They know who you are, but they don't really know you." The words hit Michael harder than any defeat he had ever suffered on the court. Every missed moment, every laugh he hadn't shared, every scraped knee he hadn't comforted, every bedtime story he hadn't told, they all rushed through his mind in a painful flood. He leaned back, overwhelmed by regret and longing. The years he had thought he understood suddenly felt like a lifetime lost. "I never wanted to take them away from you," she continued, her voice breaking. "I just didn't know how to bring you in." Michael stood slowly, his heart pounding. The terminal's noise seemed distant now, unimportant. "Can I talk to them?" he asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of hope and fear. She hesitated for a long moment, then nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "You can." In that moment, everything changed. Michael's heart pounded so fiercely that it felt louder than any roar he had ever heard in a stadium. Every step toward the twins felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Years of absence, of missed milestones and unspoken words, seemed to hang in the air around him. When he reached them, he knelt down to their level, trying to appear gentle, approachable, and yet fully present. His voice was soft but steady. "Hi," he said, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I'm Michael." The little girl's face lit up immediately, her eyes sparkling with curiosity and recognition. "I know who you are," she said confidently. "My mom says you're really good at basketball." Michael chuckled softly, the sound catching in his throat. Tears threatened to spill, but he held them back, letting the moment stretch, letting it sink in. The boy, more cautious, studied him carefully, tilting his head as if analyzing a puzzle he had just been handed. "Are you my dad?" he asked, his voice innocent yet serious. Michael's gaze flicked up to his ex-wife, searching for confirmation. She nodded, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Turning back to the boy, Michael's voice broke with emotion. "Yes," he said, the word carrying a weight of years lost and love rediscovered. "Yes, I'm your dad. And I'm really glad I finally met you." Without hesitation, the twins ran forward and hugged him. In that instant, the noise of the terminal, the flashing cameras, the world outside, none of it mattered. The fame, the past, the regrets, all of it faded into nothing. All that existed was the moment, the connection, and the realization that family could still be found. Gate 32 was no longer just a departure point. It had become a place of reunion, forgiveness, and hope. For the first time in years, the legend hadn't won a game or a trophy. He had found something far more precious: his family.